My neighbor kept stealing my packages. I set a trap. I first noticed my packages were going missing about a month ago. At first, I blamed the delivery service, thinking they'd been leaving them at the wrong door. But after checking with my neighbors, it became clear someone was stealing them. I had a strong suspicion about who it was. My next-door neighbor, Greg, was a sketchy guy. He was always lurking in the hallway when deliveries arrived, and more than once I'd seen him carrying boxes that looked eerily similar to the ones I had ordered. So, I decided to set a trap. I ordered a package, one that would look enticing to a thief. Inside, a glitter bomb and a note that read, "Caught you red-handed, package thief." I installed a small security camera above my door and waited. The very next day, the package was delivered while I was out. I hid inside, watching the live feed on my phone. Sure enough, within an hour, Greg appeared in the frame. He glanced around nervously before snatching my package and scurrying into his apartment. I grinned. Showtime. I gave him a few minutes before heading next door and knocking loudly. When he opened the door, his entire upper body was covered in glitter. He looked like a walking disco ball. "Hey, Greg," I said, trying to keep a straight face. "Have you seen my package?" His eyes darted around, panic setting in. "What? No, why would I?" I held up my phone, showing the security footage. "Because I have you on camera." He turned beet red. I was just bringing it inside to keep it safe for you." "Right," I said, folding my arms. "Then why is your shirt covered in glitter?" Greg opened his mouth but had no excuse. The shame on his face was priceless. "Look," I continued, "I could call the cops, but I won't. If you promise to return every stolen package." He nodded frantically, disappearing inside and coming back with 3 of my missing packages. "I'm sorry, man. It won't happen again." I took my things and smirked. Good. And if it does, the next trap won't be so sparkly. Greg never stole another package again. Or so I thought. A week later, I noticed small things missing from my doormat. A potted plant, a welcome mat, even a pair of sneakers I'd left out. It was petty stuff, nothing worth much, but it felt like Greg was trying to get back at me in the most passive-aggressive way possible. So, I set another trap. This time, I placed an old box on my doormat with a note taped to it. Nothing valuable inside. Inside the box? A harmless but foul-smelling stink bomb rigged to go off as soon as the box was lifted. And of course, I kept the camera rolling. It didn't take long. That evening, Greg crept over, glancing up and down the hallway. He hesitated, probably remembering the glitter fiasco, but his curiosity got the better of him. He lifted the box. Pfft! A loud hiss, followed by a wave of putrid stench, filled the air. Greg gagged, dropping the box as he stumbled back, his face twisted in disgust. I stepped out of my apartment, holding my phone with the recording already saved. "You really don't learn, do you?" Greg didn't even bother with an excuse this time. He just muttered something under his breath and slammed his door. I sent the footage to our landlord. Within days, Greg received an eviction notice. Turns out sometimes the best traps are the simplest, and the stinkiest. But even after Greg moved out, the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, I started getting strange notes slipped under my door. They were anonymous, threatening messages written in shaky handwriting. "You haven't seen the last of me, and payback is coming." At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, maybe from another neighbor who found the whole situation amusing. Then one night, I heard noises outside my window. Scratching, faint tapping. I peeked through the blinds and saw someone in a hoodie darting away into the shadows. I knew it had to be Greg. Determined to catch him in the act, I set up more cameras around my apartment building, including one facing the alley where I'd seen the figure disappear. I also rigged a fake package with a GPS tracker inside and left it conspicuously on my doorstep. Sure enough, a few nights later, the package disappeared. I tracked the GPS signal, which led me straight to a shabby motel on the outskirts of town. I called the police, showed them the footage and the GPS data. When they arrived at the motel, they found Greg in one of the rooms, surrounded by stolen items not just from me, but from several other people in the neighborhood. He'd escalated from petty theft to full-on burglary. Greg was arrested on the spot. Turns out, he had a record of similar crimes in other places he'd lived. Justice was finally served. And as for me, I never underestimated the power of a well-placed trap again. But the final twist came months later. I received an anonymous letter in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single photo. Me, taken from a distance, standing on my balcony. On the back of the photo was a note. "This isn't over." Chills ran down my spine. Was Greg back? Or had someone else picked up where he left off? This time, I didn't set a trap. I set a fortress. Motion sensors, reinforced locks, a new security system with cameras covering every angle of my apartment, inside and out. I even got a dog, a German shepherd named Max with a bark loud enough to wake the dead. Weeks passed. No more notes, no strange noises, nothing. Just when I thought maybe the nightmare had ended, I noticed something chilling on one of the camera feeds. A figure, standing perfectly still in the shadows across the street, watching my building. I zoomed in, but the hoodie obscured the face. It could have been anyone. Or Greg. I called the police again, but by the time they arrived, the figure was gone. Days later, I came home to find my door slightly ajar. My heart raced. Max growled low, sensing the tension. I pushed the door open slowly. Everything looked normal, untouched. But on the coffee table was another photo. This time of me sleeping in my bed, taken from inside my apartment. The note on the back simply read, "Your fortress has cracks." I moved out the next day. But even after relocating to a new city, hundreds of miles away, the shadow of that nightmare followed me. For months, things were quiet. I lived in a high-rise with 24/7 security, felt a fragile sense of normalcy creeping back. Max seemed relaxed. No more late-night growls or tense pacing. But one evening, I found a small, unmarked envelope slid under my new apartment door. Inside was a single key. No note, no explanation. Just the key. Cold, unfamiliar, and terrifying in its simplicity. I checked every lock, every window. Nothing was tampered with. The security footage showed no one unusual in the hallways, but deep down, I knew. Someone had been here, and they had a key. I didn't sleep that night, nor the next. Max stayed at my side, ears perked, sensing my unease. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed up and left. Again. But the truth is, no matter where I go, I can't outrun the feeling that someone is always watching. Because once you set a trap, you never know what, or who, you might catch. Months later, after settling in yet another new city, I thought I'd finally escape the shadow looming over me. Life began to feel ordinary again. Until one day, Max barked furiously at the front door. Clutched in my mailbox was a package with no return address. I hesitated, heart racing, then opened it carefully. Inside was a single object, a cracked, glitter-coated keychain. Taped to it was a note. "Found you." I realized then this nightmare wasn't over. It never would be. The next morning, I found Max lying motionless by the door, his eyes glassy and distant. The vet said it was poison. Something slipped into his food. Grief turned to rage. I wasn't running anymore. I used the key from the envelope, tracking its brand and cut pattern to narrow down possible lock types. Then I started hunting. The cameras, the notes. I pieced it all together. It was Greg. It had always been Greg. I found him living under a different name in a rundown apartment on the city's edge. I didn't call the police. I knocked on his door. When he opened it, his smug grin faded the moment he saw me. "Surprise," I whispered. And this time, the trap wasn't for him. It was for me. To make sure I'd never feel powerless again.